أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين، واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: وما كان المؤمنون لينفروا كافة فلولا نفر من كل فرقة منهم طائفة ليتفقهوا في الدين ولينذروا قومهم إذا رجعوا إليهم لعلهم يحذرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. We all know that taqleed is mandatory upon anyone who has not reached the stage of ijtihad. If you're a mujtahid yourself, if you have the ability to derive Islamic laws from its original sources, then you do not need perform taqleed. In fact, taqleed becomes haram upon you. You have to act upon your own knowledge. But if you're not a mujtahid yourself, and you do not want to exercise precaution in every single case, perform ihtiyat in every single case, then the simplest, the easiest choice is to perform taqleed of someone who has performed ijtihad himself, someone who has reached the stage of ijtihad himself. Taqleed is emulation, to take the academic and intellectual opinions of a person who has reached the stage of ijtihad. Now, when a person performs taqleed of a jurist, he or she will find that jurists disagree amongst themselves. The jurists that you follow, that you perform taqleed of, might disagree with other jurists. In fact, there are many cases in which mujtahids disagree amongst each other. This is something very noticeable, something that we cannot deny, that there is disagreements amongst mujtahids. For example, I'll give a prime example of a disagreement that occurs every year, and perhaps several times a year, amongst mujtahids, and that is regarding moon sighting. Of course, when I see disagreements between mujtahids or amongst mujtahids, I mean academic disagreements. I mean intellectual disagreements, not personal. A mujtahid A has one view, has one fatwa, mujtahid B has a different view, has an opposing view. But these are intellectual views, academic views. When I say mujtahids disagree, or why do they disagree, I mean why do they disagree intellectually? Why do they disagree academically and not personal? Our topic is not about personal disagreements between mujtahids. I mean academically. So the prime case is moon sighting. We will see that one mujtahid will announce, for example, Monday night to be the first of Ramadan, while mujtahid B will announce Tuesday night to be the first of Ramadan, or announce on Tuesday night that the next day will be the day of Ramadan, and a third mujtahid will announce a third day to be the first day of Ramadan. And the same thing applies to Eid. One mujtahid will announce Monday to be Eid, another mujtahid will announce Tuesday to be Eid, another mujtahid will announce Wednesday to be Eid. Is this possible? Have we seen this? This is very much possible, and we see this every year where mujtahids disagree on moon sighting. In the month of Muharram, we see mujtahids disagree on some rituals of azadari and aza and ma'tam. Some mujtahids say that it is recommended to perform all kinds of rituals For example, let's take the topic of tatbir. Some mujtahids believe that it is recommended. Some might even believe that it is wajib kifai, meaning that someone has to do it. If someone does it, or a group of people do it, then others no longer need to do it. But if no one does it, then it is mandatory upon everyone to perform tatbir or certain Husseini rituals. While others believe that it is mustahab, while some believe that it is haram. There are some that believe that it is haram. Well, why is this? Why do they disagree? Why can't they all believe that it is mubah? It is not wajib and it is not haram. Why can't they all agree on moon sighting? Why can't they all agree on the same day to start the month of fasting? Or why can't they all agree on the same day to break their fasting on Eid? Why is it that they disagree? When it comes to, for example, seafood, you will see that the majority of scholars believe that, from Shi'i jurists, of course, Imami jurists, that the only seafood that is halal is the fish that has scales. It contains scales. While there are other jurists that say all types of seafood is halal. There are contemporary jurists that believe that all types of seafood is halal. Well, why can't they agree on one opinion? Now, if we come to Hajj, we will see a lot of disagreement regarding the rituals of Hajj. For example, when going from city to city, when going from Medina to Mecca in the state of Ihram for men, can they ride a bus that is covered or can they not? The majority of scholars say that you cannot ride a bus even at night. During the day, they all agree that you cannot be in a vehicle, a transporting vehicle that is covered. Your head cannot be covered in the day. But at night, the majority of scholars believe that this is also not permissible, while you have scholars that say it is permissible at night only to not be covered. Tawaf in Masjid al-Haram from the second floor or third floor, is this permissible or not permissible? There's a disagreement. Rami al-Jamarat in Mina, is it permissible to perform Rami from the second floor or the third floor or not? There's various opinions. In fact, the new Jamara, relatively new, it's been there for about 10 years now. I remember the old Jamara, which was the size of a pillar, maybe a meter. The width was only a meter. Today it's about 15 meters or less. Where do we have to stone? In the middle or on the sides? Does it make a difference? Is there a specific place? There's a disagreement. Slaughtering a sheep on the day of Eid, does it have to be in Mina? Could it be in Mecca or could it be in your own hometown? There's lots of disagreements on the rituals of Hajj. The time of Maghrib, is it with sunset, when the sun sets? Or is it 15 minutes or 12 minutes after that? Dhihab al-Humra al-Mashriqiyya, when the redness on the eastern horizon disappears. Or is it with sunset? There's a disagreement. As for laws pertaining to women, fiqh al-mar'a or ahkam al-nisa, there's lots of disagreements on laws pertaining to women. Some laws of fasting, what breaks your fast, what breaks your fast and what doesn't break your fast. Submerging your head in water, does it break your fast or not? According to most scholars, it does break your fast. According to some contemporary scholars, it doesn't break your fast. So all of these disagreements between mujtahids and jurists, why? Why can't they sit and agree on one view regarding all of these topics? Whether it's moon sighting or azadari or breaking your fast, submerging your head in the water, whether it's regarding rituals of Hajj, why can't they just sit and come up with one conclusion on every case and every scenario? Why is it that we have in every case 5 or 6 opinions, 2 opinions, 3 opinions on every case? Why is this? Why is it that our scholars disagree? Why can't they all unite under the same opinions? This is what we will talk about in our discussion tonight, inshallah. First of all, my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, let us make it clear that our jurists, our ulama, have more in common than we think. We tend to have an impression of our jurists that they disagree a lot. They have a lot of disagreements. While this is not the case, they have more in common than we tend to believe. Why? Because unfortunately, it is the commonalities that are marginalized. People don't pay attention to the commonalities, but they concentrate on what? On the disagreements. Even in personal cases, even in disputes between individuals or families or groups, we tend to concentrate on our differences. We don't concentrate on our commonalities, while we should also look at what we have in common. Our scholars have more in common than we think. About 70 or 80% of the laws they agree upon. It's about 20 to 30% of the laws that there is heavy disagreements on. We have to concentrate on the commonalities as well. This is the logic of the Quran. The Quran tells us, when you speak of people of the book, start with what you have in common. Don't concentrate on your differences. Concentrate on what you have in common. See, the Quran says, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ أَلَّا نَعْبُدَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. O the people of the book, come, let's decide on what we have in common. Let us not worship other than God, because we both believe in this. This is what we have in common. We are monotheists, and you are monotheists. Jews, Christians, and Muslims are all monotheists. So let's concentrate on what we have in common, and then we'll work up. Unfortunately, some people are negative. They only look at the cup that is half empty, and they don't realize that it is half it is half full. The same way that it is half empty, it is also half full. So our scholars have a lot in common. In fact, most of Risala al-Amaliyya, if you take the Risala al-Amaliyya, the fiqhi manual of the various maraja' that are alive today, you will see that 80% of the laws are the same. Laws pertaining to salah, laws pertaining to sawm, laws pertaining to khums. 80% of these laws are the same. It is about 20 or 30% of the laws that they disagree on academically and intellectually. There's a very important point, my dear friends, and that is, we followers of Ahlul Bayt, we believe that the door of ijtihad is open. Ijtihad is very legitimate. And we talked about ijtihad several nights ago. We said that ijtihad is exerting an effort, making an effort to derive an Islamic law from its original source. This is very much legitimate. This is very much permissible, if not mandatory, as we talked about in a previous lecture. Ijtihad is mandatory, that a group of scholars who have reached the stage of ijtihad, they have to perform ijtihad. They have to derive Islamic laws for the community, for the larger community. Since the school of Ahlul Bayt opened the door of ijtihad, that means they opened the door for disagreement. That is the whole purpose behind ijtihad. Ijtihad is that each scholar makes an effort to derive an Islamic law based on his or her understanding. That means one mujtahid arrives to one conclusion that is legitimate, although he might not reach the actual law, as we talked about in another lecture. He might not reach God's hukm al-waqi'i, the actual law, but what he reaches, he's safe. That is hujjah. It has an authority. It will be accepted from him. While another mujtahid might reach another conclusion, and that is also legitimate. They are both accepted. As long as they did not have shortcomings in their ijtihad, both views are accepted and both are legitimate. And their followers are also excused on the Day of Judgment, even if it turns out that that was not the actual law by God. But because they followed a mujtahid, a God-fearing, righteous mujtahid, they are safe. If there's a third view or fourth view, that is also legitimate and fine. So opening the door of ijtihad, open the door for disagreement, academically and intellectually, not personal disagreement. It is okay to disagree intellectually. It is okay to disagree academically. Otherwise, the Ahlul Bayt could have told us, could have appointed one scholar for us and told us that follow this scholar till the Day of Judgment. Like a Shaykh al-Tusi or a Shaykh al-Mufid. They could have told us that do taqleed of this scholar till the Day of Judgment. There's no more ijtihad. And this is what our Sunni brothers and sisters did. They closed the door of ijtihad. And they restricted to taqleed to 4 of their imams, 4 of their scholars. Abu Hanifa, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Al-Shafi'i, Malik ibn Anas. Ijtihad out of the realm of these 4 schools of thought is forbidden. They have to follow one of these 4 until the Day of Judgment. We have Hanafis today that still follow Abu Hanifa. We have Malikis today that follow the fiqh of Malik ibn Anas. These are the only jurists that they're allowed to follow. For us, this is not the case. We don't have to follow a Shaykh al-Tusi or al-Mufid in taqleed. We follow various scholars, the most knowledgeable scholar in every time and in every age. If the Imams wanted to eradicate disagreement, intellectual disagreement, they would have told us to follow one, to emulate one jurist like Al-Mufid or Shaykh al-Tusi till the Day of Judgment. There would have been no disagreements. We would have been all following one view and one opinion. But when Ahlul Bayt told us to follow various scholars, فَأَمَّا مَنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْفُقَهَاءِ, if he is among the fuqaha and he is righteous, he is God-fearing, فَعَلَى الْعَوَامِ أَنْ يُقَلِّدُوا, then you may follow him. The Ahlul Bayt did not restrict to taqleed in one individual and told everyone to follow him. They opened taqleed for anyone who carries knowledge. And this is how it should be. Imagine if there was only one doctor in the world and everyone wanted to refer to one doctor. If there was only one engineer or there was only one lawyer and everyone had to follow that lawyer or that engineer or that doctor. This is irrational. There has to be disagreements. Academically, this is okay to disagree. It's okay for doctors to disagree because every doctor gives an opinion based on his understanding of medicine, based on what he studied and what he interprets to be correct. Same goes for lawyers, same goes for engineers, same goes for all fields and all specialties. Mujtahids are the same, based on their reading and understanding, as we shall talk about, of why they disagree, what causes them to disagree. Logistically, they have their differences of opinion. This is very healthy. It's healthy that scholars disagree. It would be unhealthy that they are forced to accept the same view, all of them. It's unhealthy that one view is enforced upon all human beings, even if they don't deem it to be legitimate, even if they don't accept it, if they don't think that this is the right view, but they're forced to accept it. The same way that the Christian church, the Catholic Church, enforced dogma. They forced people to accept their views. They believed the earth was flat, and anyone who disagreed with them was a heretic. This was blasphemy to believe that the earth was round. The earth had to be flat. They enforced these views on others. In Shia Islam, we don't have this. In the school of Ahlul Bayt, we don't enforce views on others. If you're a mujtahid, you're entitled to your view. And you're another mujtahid, you're entitled to your own view. And so on and so forth. So disagreements among scholars and mujtahids, my dear friends, this is healthy. This is healthy to disagree academically and intellectually. That our scholars agree to disagree. They've agreed to disagree. And they don't enforce their views on others. In fact, this is how knowledge evolves, my dear friends. When we disagree, our views complete one another. I'm sure you've seen this. When you have a view and your friend has another view, you sit and you have a discussion and you speak one another. You have a dialogue. You have a debate. You try to convince your friend of your views. Your friend tries to convince you of your views, and at the end of the day, you've grown. Perhaps you won't accept your friend's view and your friend won't accept your view, but you've come to appreciate that view. You've come to learn. You've come to see another perspective, another view, another side to the story. So you grow one another. when we disagree with each other, we complete one another. Our views will complete one another. And this is how knowledge evolves. This is how science evolves. This is how medicine evolves. This is how law evolves. When scholars when they come up with new research, when they come up with different theories, and so they disagree with one another and they complete one another. And that's how newer, better theories come up every day. There's new research, there's new statistics. Imam Ali alayhi salam has a very beautiful quote. He says, اضربوا بعض الرأي ببعض يتولد منه الصواب. He says, let opinions join one another, disagree, debate one another, you will reach the right conclusion. I have my opinion, and you have another opinion. Let's sit, let's debate, let's talk. At the end, we'll reach a good conclusion. We'll reach the most accurate conclusion. But if I want to impose my views on others and not give a chance for others to express their views, for others to express the conclusions that they've reached based on their research, then this is going to be dogma. We're not going to reach the truth. We're not going to reach haqq. We will reach haqq if we share our views, if we debate each other's views and reach the rightful conclusion. Also, my dear friends, what we need today, what we need is tolerance for other views. Unfortunately, I see that in some communities, amongst youth, even amongst even the educated, there is no tolerance for other views. Unfortunately, we have become intolerant for other views. Those who oppose us, those who oppose another view, another opinion. I might not necessarily accept that view. I have my own view. I have my own opinions. But this doesn't mean that I should be closed-minded, narrow-minded. I should be open-minded. I should listen to other views. This is the logic of the Quran. فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. Give glad tidings to the true servants of Allah who listen to other opinions, who listen to the word. Word meaning they listen to other views and opinions. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. So they choose the best of the various opinions, of the various views. Those who don't wish to listen to other views and opinions, this is the logic of the tribes of some prophets, like the tribe of Musa alayhi salam. جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا. They put their fingers in their ears and they covered their heads and they didn't want to listen to what Musa had to say. This is the logic of kuffar, of mushrikeen. This is not the logic of Islam. The logic of Islam, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. Those who listen to various opinions and choose the best opinion, the opinion that is most compatible with the Quran, the opinion that is most compatible with the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt, logic and reason. We have to have tolerance for other views, my dear friends. We don't condemn. We don't quickly label people as deviants, even if we disagree with them. It doesn't mean we have to accept their view. But we shouldn't quickly jump to label people as deviants. Previously, people were more tolerant in the Shia community. We had more tolerance in the Shia community. Let me give you a couple of examples. Ibn al-Junayd. Ibn al-Junayd is one of our most revered scholars. He was a Sunni that converted to Shi'ism. And he exercised qiyas, analogy, when it came to ijtihad. Of course, qiyas is frowned upon in the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt because it is an innovation by Abu Hanifa, by the Sunni school of thought. In Shi'ism, we don't have qiyas. Ibn al-Junayd, because he was a Sunni, he applied qiyas. Yet, look at how Shaykh al-Tusi and al-Najashi, these two revered scholars in Shi'ism, when they talk about Ibn al-Junayd and their entries and Rijal, they revere him. They call him a faqih, wajhun min ashabina. He's a revered scholar in our school of thought. They don't condemn him. They don't call him a deviant. Also, Ibn Qiba al-Razi. This is also another scholar from the formative period. Ibn Qibr Razi rejected khabar al-wahid, isolated reports. He rejected these reports. He rejected most of our ahadith. He said these are isolated reports that cannot be accepted. More than that, he even doubted the infallibility of imams, of the imams. And of course, we disagree with him. We believe that our imams are infallible. He had a theory called al-ulama al-abrar, that our scholars are righteous scholars. Our imams, Ibn al-Qibr Razi, he believed that our imams were righteous scholars. They were not ma'soom. Of course, he was wrong. This is incorrect. We believe that our imams are infallible. They're ma'soom. But look at what Shaykh al-Tusi and al-Najashi, when they speak about Ibn Qibr Razi, they praise him. They say he was a jurist. He was a theologian. Wajhun min ashabina. He was a respected face in the community. They don't condemn him. They don't call him a deviant. Although they disagree with him. Shaykh al-Tusi believes in al-asma. He believes in infallibility. And so does al-Najashi. But they don't condemn. They had tolerance for other views. Today, unfortunately, we are less tolerant. I don't mean to say that we should accept any view out there. And any view that is out there, we should accept it and believe in it. No, but we should be tolerant of it. Have your own views. Refer to your own marja'. Who is your marja'? Refer to your own marja', but let us be tolerant of other views. Let us be accepting. Accepting meaning let there be other views. We shouldn't condemn other views. Not that we should accept everything that is out there and believe in it. No, but we should be tolerant of other views. We shouldn't be quick to condemn and call people as deviants. Al-Shafi'i, the Sunni Imam, has a interesting quote. Others ascribe it to others. This quote has been ascribed to others, not just Al-Shafi'i. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who said it, but what matters is what is said. It's an interesting quote. Al-Shafi'i says, رأيي صواب يحتمل الخطأ ورأي غيري خطأ يحتمل الصواب. My opinion is the truth, but it could be wrong. And the opinion of my counterpart is wrong, is false, but it could be right. You always leave a room. You always leave room. You don't insist upon your views. This is my view. This is my opinion. But I'm not ma'soom. I'm not infallible. At the end of the day, I could be wrong. And my opponent is also not infallible, but he's not shaitan as well. It seems that he's wrong, but there's always a chance that he could be right. You always leave that room. We shouldn't be arrogant intellectually. Intellectually and academically, we shouldn't be arrogant. Yes, there is academic arrogance. There is intellectual arrogance when I feel that my opinions are right and everyone else is wrong. I am the only one entering heaven, everyone else is going to hell. I am the only one that is guided and everyone else is a deviant. This is intellectual arrogance. This is academic arrogance. This is not right. Also, my dear friends, let's learn to accept other views and not fight over it. I can have an academic view, a fatwa, and someone else, another jurist, will have a fatwa. This doesn't mean that we should fight over it and make it personal. We don't need to fight over every single disagreement. Doctors disagree with one another, but they're not killing each other. They're not performing takfir of one another. They're not condemning one another. Lawyers also disagree, but they don't fight. Engineers also disagree, but they don't fight. Why is it that we, followers of Maraji', when we disagree with one another, we condemn each other? We perform takfir of one another. And we make it personal. And we fight and we take it on social media and we make a fool of ourselves in front of others. This is not right. When is it that we will accept to disagree? Every person is entitled to their opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion and others are entitled to their opinion. We need tolerance. Now, let's come back to why Mujtahids disagree. Is this a new phenomena? Is it just today that scholars are disagreeing? Scholars in our generation are disagreeing over moon sighting or over tatbir or Husseini rituals? Or is this something old? My dear friends, Mujtahids have been disagreeing since the earliest days, since the time when ijtihad became legitimate and was legislated, and the Imams told us to perform ijtihad. Scholars have been disagreeing with one another. They've had conflicting views. They've had opposing views. From the time of Shaykh al-Saduq and before the time of Shaykh al-Saduq up till our time, jurists have disagreed. They've had various opinions, academically disagreed. I'm not saying personally. Academically, intellectually, they've disagreed. This is not something new. Let me give you a couple of examples. Shaykh al-Saduq and Shaykh al-Mufid, teacher and student. Shaykh al-Saduq was the teacher of Shaykh al-Mufid. Shaykh al-Saduq wrote a book called Al-I'tiqadat or Al-I'tiqad, beliefs. It's a book on aqa'id. Shaykh al-Mufid, his student, came and wrote Tasheeh al-I'tiqad, correcting our beliefs. Meaning he corrected the beliefs of Shaykh al-Saduq. There were so many issues that they disagreed on. One issue was whether the Prophet would forget or not forget. Sahwun Nabi. Al-Saduq believed that prophets were ordinary human beings. They could forget. While Shaykh al-Mufid believed that prophets cannot forget. They are immaculate. They are infallible. It's impossible for a prophet to forget. He won't forget. He won't forget a verse. He won't forget a name. He won't forget anything. They disagreed amongst each other. As-Sayyid al-Murtada and Shaykh al-Tusi, teacher and student, they disagreed. They disagreed on the legitimacy of isolated reports, Hujjiyat Khabar al-Wahid, regarding the narrations that we have. The narrations in, for example, Al-Kafi. As-Sayyid al-Murtada rejected these narrations. He believed that we cannot accept isolated reports. While Shaykh al-Tusi came and said we have to accept isolated reports. We cannot have a fiqh without these isolated reports. Khabar al-Wahid, the reports found in Al-Kafi and in other books. The books that we inherited from the companions of the Ahl Bayt. Two scholars, teacher and student, they disagreed with one another. Ibn Idris al-Hilli, the grandson of Shaykh al-Tusi, disagreed with his grandfather. Read his book As-Sara'ir. In his As-Sara'ir, Ibn Idris al-Hilli, who is the grandson of Shaykh al-Tusi, disagrees time and time again with his own grandfather, Shaykh al-Tusi. In his book As-Sara'ir, it's full of disagreements with his grandfather, Shaykh al-Tusi. Al-Allam al-Hilli, in his books, he disagrees with Ibn Idris al-Hilli. And they're both from the city of Hilla. They disagreed. And sometimes the disagreements became very, the language was very harsh sometimes by both Al-Allam al-Hilli and Ibn Idris. They disagreed with one another. Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, he disagreed with the scholars before him regarding the water in wells. If an impurity falls in a well, previously they didn't have faucets, water didn't come home, they didn't have the leisure of having faucets where water would come home in their restrooms, in their bathrooms, in their kitchens. No, they had to dig water from wells. Let's say a dog falls in a well and dies. A dog in itself is najis. When he dies, he's also najis. If he dies in a well and we have to dig water from the well, does it become impurified or not? Previous scholars all believed that a well becomes impurified. Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli said no. The water in wells does not become impurified. Why? Because the water keeps on coming out. It keeps on renewing itself. It's not still water, so it does not get contaminated. It's running water, so to speak, because a water has a source. And all scholars that came after Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, they accepted this view. They accepted the view that the water in a well does not become contaminated. It does not become najis. Al-Allam al-Hilli, he disagreed with scholars before him. He came and he introduced the 4 categorizations of hadith. He said that our hadith are 4 categories: Sahih, Hasan, Muwathaq, and Da'if. And hence Akhbaris, they attack Al-Allam al-Hilli for introducing such a category. Scholars after Al-Allam al-Hilli, they accepted this categorization. He caused a paradigm shift in the history of hadith studies. In recent times, As-Sayyid Muhsin Al-Hakim, As-Sayyid Muhsin Al-Hakim issued a fatwa that the people of the book are tahir, they are not najis. Christians and Jews should not be treated as impurities, just like we treat blood and urine. No, they are tahir. While scholars before him, they also held this opinion, but they had not issued a fatwa. It was an academic opinion, but it remained an academic opinion. It was not in the Risal Amaliyah. It was not in their fiqh manuals. While Sayyid Muhsin Hakim had the courage to issue a fatwa based on this academic opinion. He said Christians and Jews are tahir. And most scholars that have come after Sayyid Muhsin Hakim, they also accepted this view. As for Sayyid Al-Khoi, Sayyid Al-Khoi disagrees a lot with scholars before him. And he's rightly so, because he has his academic views. He's done his research, and so he disagrees. Let me give you a couple of examples. Sayyid Al-Khoi believes that it is not haram to shave your beard except goatee. You can put a goatee. You can shave the sides of your beard, but you have to keep a goatee. While most other scholars, they don't accept this. They say having a goatee is not enough. You have to have a full beard. Sayyid Al-Khoi disagreed with other scholars regarding meat and curry. If you have curry and there's meat in it, and you don't know if this meat has been slaughtered, the meat from the animal, has it been slaughtered in the Islamic way or not? You don't know. If you know that it has been slaughtered in the Islamic way, it is halal. If you know that it's been slaughtered in a non-Islamic way, it's haram. But if you don't know, you don't eat the meat, but you can eat the curry. Although the meat is inside the curry is not najis. While other scholars believe that the curry becomes najis and you cannot eat it, so the Khoi says no, you can't eat the meat because you don't know if it's halal, but the curry is tahir because you don't know if it's najis, and by default everything is tahir. He disagreed. At the time of midnight, Sayyid Al-Khoi disagreed with other scholars. Most scholars believe that midnight is the midpoint between Maghrib and Fajr. While Sayyid Al-Khoi believes midnight is the midpoint between Maghrib and sunrise, not Fajr. Sunrise. Because Sayyid Al-Khoi believes from Fajr to sunrise, that is part of night and that is not part of day. So midnight, according to Sayyid Al-Khoi, is different from other scholars. And it's not a minor difference. It's about a 45-minute difference in midnight. So for example, for most scholars, midnight could be at 11:15 p.m. For Sayyid Al-Khoi, it's at midnight. It's at 12 a.m. There's disagreements. There's a history of disagreements. Today, when we see scholars disagree, this is not something new. This is not a new phenomena. This existed in the past, from the early days of ijtihad up till today. Now, let's come to the main topic of why scholars disagree, logistically. Why does one scholar give this sort of fatwa and another scholar gives another sort of fatwa? Of course, the reasons for disagreements could be many, and it could be very technical for those who for those who have not studied in the Hawza. And since this lecture is intended for a general audience, I'll try to not go into the technical terms. So one reason behind the disagreements between scholars could be because of their Rijali views. Because of their Rijali views. So for example, one Mujtahid believes that this narrator is authenticated, he's reliable, he's thiqah, and so he will accept his narrations. While another scholar might believe that this narrator, this transmitter of hadith, is unreliable, and hence he will reject his narrations. For example, Sahl ibn Ziyad. Sahl ibn Ziyad is one of the companions of the Imams. He's a companion, I believe, of Imam al-Hadi and al-Hasan al-Askari alayhum salam. Is he reliable or is he not reliable? There's a major debate among scholars. And Sahl ibn Ziyad has lots of narrations. So if you disagree whether he's reliable or not, this will have a direct effect on his narrations. Sahl ibn Ziyad has lots of fiqh narrations. So if you accept him, you will accept his narrations. If you accept his narrations, that will affect your ijtihad because his narrations are fiqhi. He might have a narration that says this is halal, that is haram. So if you don't accept his narrations, your ijtihad will be different, your conclusions will be different. If you accept him, your narrations will be different, your ijtihad will be different. And there's lots of individuals, lots of transmitters, ruwat, that are disagreed upon. As-Sukuni, Al-Nawfali, Umar ibn Hanbala, Muhammad ibn Sinan, Sahl ibn Ziyad that we talked about, Ali ibn Abi Hamza al-Bata'ini. These are transmitters where there's lots of debate over whether they're reliable or not reliable. Hence we have to come to Rijal. And hence a Mujtahid cannot be a Mujtahid unless he is a Rijali, unless he has mastered the science of Rijal. He has to have Rijali opinions. Can he accept these transmitters or not? Based on that, that will have a direct effect on their fiqhi conclusions and their fatwas. Also, certain books, are they reliable or not reliable? There's a big debate. There's books of hadith besides the 4 books, Al-Kafi, Al-Tahdhib, Malahidh al-Faqih, and Al-Ibtisar. Besides these 4 books, there's other books of hadith that there's lots of debate regarding them. Are they reliable or not reliable? For example, Ghawali al-La'ali, Fiqh al-Rida, Tuhaf al-Uqul, Basair al-Darajat, Al-Mahasin by Al-Barqi. These are various books of hadith where there's lots of debate. Can we rely on these books? Why? Because of manuscripts, because these books are old. And we have some manuscripts. Can we rely on these manuscripts or not? This is all going to have an effect on ijtihad because there's narrations in those books that will have an effect. There's narrations that say this is halal, that is haram. Let me give you an example. As-Sayyid al-Khoi, he relies on a narration by Imam al-Rida. This narration is found in Mustatrafat al-Sara'ir by Ibn Idris, where Imam al-Rida is asked, can I shave my beard? The Imam says, as for أَمَّا الْعَارِضَيْنِ فَنَعَمْ وَأَمَّا الْمُقَدَّمْ فَلَا. As for the side of the beard, you can shave it. But as for the front side, meaning the goatee, you cannot. This hadith is in Mustatrafat al-Sara'ir. Not everyone accepts Mustatrafat al-Sara'ir. Sayyid al-Khoi accepts this book, while others might not accept this book. This has a direct effect on ijtihad. While the lay, we say, why do they disagree? Why do they insist on disagreeing with one another? Why can't they accept to agree and unite? It's not that simple, my dear friends. It's not that simple. If I accept this book while another jurist doesn't accept this book. Tafsir al-Qummi, Sayyid al-Khoi accepts Tafsir al-Qummi. And any narration in it is reliable and accepted. While Sayyid al-Sistani, for example, does not accept Tafsir al-Qummi. He says that this manuscript of Tafsir al-Qummi is not the original, and hence it is unreliable. It's not that simple to say, why can't Sayyid al-Khoi and Sayyid al-Sistani agree on moon sighting? It's not that simple. They have different opinions. They have different Rijali opinions. They might accept some books and reject other books. So this is one. Another issue why a reason why scholars disagree and cannot agree is it's based on their reading of a narration, how they understand a hadith. It's one hadith. Let's say it's authentic. We took care of the Rijali aspect. This hadith is authentic. But one mujtahid will come and will understand one thing from this narration. Another mujtahid will come and understand something else from the narration. One mujtahid will understand a broad meaning, while another mujtahid will understand it contextually, will understand it in a different meaning. Let me give you an example regarding moon sighting. Abu Basir, a companion of Imam Sadiq, he asked the Imam, he tells him that if in my city it was cloudy, for example, Monday night, it was cloudy, we couldn't see the moon, and hence we did not start fasting on Tuesday. We started fasting on Wednesday. But after Ramadan, 2 individuals from another city. He doesn't say which city. Is it close? Is it far? He says two individuals from another city, they came and they told us they had sighted the moon on Monday night. And they started fasting on Tuesday while we started fasting on Wednesday. What should I do? He said, make up that fast. That Tuesday that you did not fast, fast on it. Sayyid al-Khoi says the hadith is general. Abu Basir tells the Imam that two individuals came from a city. He doesn't say which city. It could be a distant city 1,000 kilometers away, or it could be 20 kilometers away. The hadith did not restrict which city, so it's general. While for Sayyid al-Sistani, for example, it'd say no, the city has to be close by. This is not a city that is far. It's a city that is close by, one of the neighboring cities, like Najaf and Karbala, like Birmingham and Manchester, like Birmingham and Leeds, for example, but not Birmingham and New York City. So when Abu Basir says two individuals came from a city, he means a nearby city. You see, two readings, two different interpretations to the hadith, and hence Sayyid al-Khoi believes that if the moon incited anywhere in the world, as long as you shared some of the night, that is sufficient for you. While Sayyid al-Sistani believes in the unity of horizons, that the moon has to be sighted in your horizon and not in a different horizon. It's the reading of a narration. One scholar reads it in one way, another scholar reads it in another way. Also, the disagreement is also based on the literal meaning of a hadith. Some scholars view a hadith and read it literally, while others read in between the lines. Let me give you an example. The hadith on moon sighting, صُمْ لِلرُّؤْيَةِ وَافْطُرْ لِلرُّؤْيَةِ. Begin fasting due to moon sighting, break your fast due to moon sighting. Most scholars say the Imam or the Rasulullah said moon sighting, that's it. I cannot rely on anything else. I cannot rely on scientific calculations. The Imam, the Prophet said, begin fasting if you sight the moon, break your fast if you sight the moon. I have to sight the moon with my eyes, with the naked eye. While other scholars said the Imam didn't literally mean moon sighting. He meant to say, begin fasting when the moon is born, when there's a new month. And previously, how did they know if a new month had started? How did they know that a new moon was born? By seeing it, because there were no scientific calculations. Today we have scientific calculations. Scientists tell us when a new moon is born, when a new month starts. And so we can rely on scientific calculations. So there's a difference between a literal reading of the hadith and going behind what the Imam was saying, trying to discover what the Imam was trying to say, and not taking it literally. This also has an effect on ijtihad. Also, my dear friends, the methodology that scholars have in dealing with conflicting narrations, this is vital. This will have a major effect on their ijtihad and on the conclusions that they reach. Because we have a lot of narrations that conflict one another. Why do we have narrations that conflict? That's another story. Is it because of taqiyya? For example, Imam al-Sadiq was asked by Zurara. He was asked one thing, he'll give an answer. But someone else who could be a Sunni or who could cause a problem for Imam al-Sadiq, he asks the same question, the Imam will give him another answer, different from the answer that he gave to Zurara. Because of taqiyya, he was in the position of taqiyya. He had to conceal the truth in order to save his life and the lives of Shia. Hence, we have the problem of conflicting narrations. Taqiyya could be a part of the problem. Another part of the, taqiyya could be a part of the reason why we have conflicting narrations. It could be something else. So what do we do when narrations conflict? Here, scholars have different methodologies. The popular opinion says that if a hadith conflict one another, we take the hadith that is most compatible to the Quran, and we reject the hadith that is not compatible to the Quran. If they are both compatible, then we take the hadith that conflicts with the Sunni view, and we take the hadith that disagrees. The hadith that is compatible with the Sunni view is rejected, and we take the hadith that conflicts with them. Why? Because the Imam was performing taqiyya. So he was compatible. He tried to make his fatwa or his view compatible to the Sunni view. So that should be rejected. This is one view. This is the popular view among scholars. موافقة الكتاب ومخالفة العامة. At times of conflicting narrations, we take what is compatible to the Quran and what conflicts with the Sunnis. Another view, for example, by Al-Akhund Al-Khurasani, the author of Kifaya, he says, we have a choice to take either one. If there's two narrations that conflict, you have a choice. You could take narration A or you could take narration B. You don't have to take one and reject the other. You have the choice. And there are narrations that say this. There are narrations that say if there are narrations that conflict one another, you have the choice to choose either one. We have a third opinion, for examul, by Sayyid Taqi al-Qummi. He believes that if two narrations conflict, we take the later narration and we leave the former. For example, if we have a narration by Imam al-Baqir that conflicts with a narration by Imam al-Sadiq, we take the narration by Imam al-Sadiq and not Imam al-Baqir. If we have a narration by Imam al-Sadiq that conflicts with a narration by Imam al-Kadhim, we take Imam al-Kadhim's hadith and reject Imam al-Sadiq's hadith. We take the one that is later. This is the view of Sayyid Taqi al-Qummi. We have a fourth view that says narrations that conflict, they're actually not conflicting. We think that they conflict because we think they are general for all times and all places, while each hadith is contextual. So hadith A was stated by Imam al-Sadiq to a certain individual based on the maslahah, based on the interest that Imam al-Sadiq saw, while hadith number 2 was given to someone else based on someone else's circumstances. So each hadith was based on different circumstances. There's no conflict. We assume there's a conflict because we assume it's one circumstance and one individual. And these hadith are meant to be general for all times. While the Imam was solving a problem. The Imam was being contextual in both hadith. Hence, your methodology in dealing with conflicting narrations will have a direct effect on your fiqhi fatwa. So, cases of child custody. Child custody, when a husband and wife divorce and they have children, who gets custody? Here there's lots of conflicting narrations. What do we do? Based on your methodology in conflicting narrations, you'll have different views. And hence, regarding child custody, we have different views. Can a wife inherit land from her husband? When a husband dies, his wife inherits from him, except land, according to most scholars. But there's also various other opinions. Here there's lots of traditions, conflicting traditions on whether a wife can inherit land from her husband or not. Based on your methodology in how to deal with conflicting narrations, you'll arrive at various opinions. Also, usul al-fiqh, my dear friends, just as rijali views of mujtahids will have a direct effect on their fiqh views, your usul al-fiqh views will also have a direct effect on your fiqh views. Your methodology in usul al-fiqh, your theories and views in usul al-fiqh will have a direct effect on your results and what you choose in fiqh. That is why usul al-fiqh is very crucial and important. You cannot be a mujtahid lest you master usul al-fiqh and rijal. So in usul al-fiqh, what are your theories? What's your legal theory? Usul al-fiqh is basically legal theory. What are your views and theories in legal theory? This has a direct effect. For example, in usul al-fiqh, do you believe that ijma', consensus of all scholars, is it authoritative or not? For example, if I see that most scholars have agreed on an opinion, is that opinion binding on me or no? If I reach a different conclusion based on my reading of the Quran and the Sunnah, do I have to agree with them, or is their agreement, is their ijma' binding upon me? That is an usul al-fiqh. I have to decide that in usul al-fiqh and not in fiqh. Before I come to fiqh, I have to get my theories in legal theory in usul al-fiqh straight. Is ijma' hujjah? Is consensus binding upon me or not? Is mashhur hujjah, the popular opinion among scholars, is it binding upon me, or may I disagree with them? I have to decide this in usul al-fiqh. Is a weak narration, a narration that has a weak isnad, But most scholars acted upon it. They issued a fatwa based upon it. Does it become reliable? Does a weak narration that is accepted by the majority of scholars, does it become reliable or does it become weak? So the Khoi says it remains weak. It doesn't matter. Even if most scholars accepted this hadith, but if it has a weak chain of narrators, it remains weak. And a sahih hadith, if it has a sahih chain of narrators, if all scholars rejected it, the rejection does not make it weak, it remains sahih. This has to be decided in usul al-fiqh. What you decide in usul al-fiqh will have a direct result in fiqh. So you might come across a weak hadith that says this is halal or that is wajib. Do you accept it or do you not accept it? You have to decide that in usul al-fiqh. You see? So it's not as simple as why can't they disagree? Why can't they just sit together and decide to agree on khums, on hajj, on azadari, on taqleed, on moon sighting? It's not that simple, my dear friends. It's a complicated matter. It's a complex matter relating to ijtihad. It's like saying, why can't all doctors agree? Why can't all engineers agree? Why can't all lawyers agree? It's not that simple, my dear friends. Finally, no matter how much mujtahids and scholars disagree, although we said in the beginning that they have a lot more in common than they disagree. Our scholars accept or agree on 70 or 80% of the laws, and they disagree over 20 or 30% of the laws. No matter how much they disagree, they will agree on one thing, and that is love for Imam Hussein, the cause of Imam Hussein. You will see all of the different scholars with their different tastes, with their different ijtihad. They come from different backgrounds, but when it comes to Imam Hussein, they all have immense love for Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein is their motivation. Imam Hussein is their inspiration. You will see that these scholars, when it comes time in the 10th of Muharram, they cancel their lessons. There's no lessons. There's no hawza during the 10 days of Muharram. And they hold majalis in their homes. In fact, there are some scholars throughout the entire year before their lesson, fiqhi lesson at hawza, they have a reciter come and recite the masa'ib of Imam Hussein. Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Ha'iri, as the founder of the hawza in Qom, it has been narrated that before his bahth al-kharij, before his upper level lessons to his hawza students, he would have a reciter, a dhakir or reciter come and recite the masa'ib of Imam Hussein for 5 or 10 minutes before the lecture. They all had an attachment to Imam Hussein alayhi salam. As we conclude our series and our majalis during the month of Muharram, let's remember one of the most tragic masa'ib, tragedy for the Ahlul Bayt. It was when they departed Karbala. It was when they were paraded, the women of Rasulullah, the women of Imam Hussein were paraded in the streets of Kufa and in the streets of Sham. The way they were paraded, the way they were taken as captives, this was probably the greatest tragedy upon the Ahlul Bayt. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was asked what was the greatest tragedy from Ashura and Karbala. Was it Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? He said no, although that is a great tragedy. Was it the infant Abdullah? He said no, although that was a great tragedy. Was it the martyrdom of Imam Hussein himself and his beheading? He said that is a great tragedy, but was not the greatest tragedy. The greatest tragedy was Asham. Damascus was our greatest tragedy. When Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha was brought in the palace of Yazid in front of the men, they're all alcoholics, they're drinking, and as Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha was brought in his palace, this was the greatest tragedy. As Sayyidah Zainab Salamullahi alayha, she saw Yazid sitting on his throne, and the head of Imam Hussein was in front of him, and he was drinking. Every time he would drink, he would pour wine on the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And then he would take a stick and beat the lips of Aba Abdullah. He wanted to crush the heart of Sayyidah Zainab. This was the greatest tragedy. On an eve like this, as Sayyidah Zainab was leaving Karbala. They were leaving. They had to say farewell to the bodies. Sayyidah Zainab had never departed Imam Hussein and Abu al-Fadl. Now she has to depart. She has to leave with women and children. There's no men with them except Al-Alil, Imam Zain al-Abidin. What a difficult moment for Sayyidah Zainab to go from body to body saying farewell. She would sit next to the body, the headless body of Imam Hussein. And then she would go to Ali al-Akbar, Aoun, Muhammad, Al-Qasim, Abu al-Fadl, saying farewell to everyone. And then she mounted her horse. And then she helped the women and children mount their horse and the camels. Except she was the only one remaining. Kulthum said, let me help you. Get on your camel. She said, no, I want the one who brought me here to get up and help me get on my camel. My brother Abbas, you're the one that brought me to Karbala. You're the one that told me I will take care of you. Abbas, get up and see what they've done to me. Get up and see the signs on my back, how they're beating me. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العلي الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا عيبا إلا سترته ولا خوفا إلا آمنته ولا رزقا إلا بسطته ولا شملا إلا جمعته ولا مرضا إلا شفيته ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات نقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.